My name is Tom, and my story isn't an easy one to tell. It all started when I was just a little kid, about 4 years old. That's when my dad left us. I don't remember much about him, just a tall figure walking out the door with a suitcase. Mom cried a lot after that. For a while it was just Mom and me. We did okay, I guess. But Mom seemed sad a lot. Then, when I was 8, she met Dale. Dale was nice enough at first. He'd come over with chocolates for Mom, and sometimes bring me a toy car or a comic book. Mom started smiling more. I liked seeing her happy. Before I knew it, Mom told me, "Tom, Dale and I are getting married. Isn't that great?" I nodded and smiled because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. But inside, I felt weird. Like something was changing, and I wasn't sure if it was good or bad. After the wedding, Dale moved in with us. That's when things started to change. He wasn't mean to me, not really. But he made it clear I wasn't his kid. He'd say things like, "Tom, go to your room. I want to spend time with your mother." Or when we were all watching TV, he'd sit between me and Mom on the couch. Then Mom got pregnant. She was so happy, and Dale was over the moon. When my half-brother Jack was born, it was like I faded into the background. Dale would spend hours playing with Jack, teaching him to walk, to talk. With me, he'd just nod and say, "Hey, Tom," when he saw me. A couple of years later, my half-sister Sarah was born. By then, I was used to being on the outside. I spent more time in my room, reading books or playing video games. It was easier than watching Dale be the dad to Jack and Sarah that he never was to me. Mom never said anything about it. She was always busy with the little ones. Sometimes I'd catch her looking at me with a sad expression, but when I'd ask what was wrong, she'd just shake her head and say, "Nothing, Tom. Everything's fine." But it wasn't fine. Not really. High school was tough. I wasn't popular. But I had a few good friends. I threw myself into my studies, figuring that if I couldn't have a happy family life, at least I could have a good future. When it came time to apply for colleges, I applied to schools far away from home. I told Mom it was because they had good programs, but really I just wanted to get away. The day I left for college was strange. Mom hugged me tight and cried a little. Dale shook my hand and said, "Good luck." Tom, Jack, and Sarah, who were still pretty young, just waved goodbye. I felt relieved as I drove away, but also a little sad. I hoped things might be different when I came back. My freshman year of college was amazing. For the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I made friends, joined clubs, and even started dating a bit. When the year ended, I was excited to go home and share all my experiences. But when I got there, something felt off. Mom seemed nervous around me. Dale barely acknowledged my presence. Jack and Sarah were shy, like I was a stranger. A week after I got home, Mom sat me down for a talk. I'll never forget what she said. "Tom, honey, I think it might be best if you don't come home next summer. You're an adult now, and, well, there's not really room for you here anymore. Maybe you could get a summer job near your college." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "You're kicking me out?" I asked, not believing what I was hearing. Mom looked away. "It's not like that, Tom. It's better this way. For everyone." I didn't say anything else. I just went to my room, packed my things, and left the next day. I blocked Mom's number on my phone and didn't look back. The next few years were hard. I worked my way through college, taking summer jobs and internships. I didn't have a home to go back to during breaks, so I'd crash on friends' couches or rent cheap rooms. After graduation, I threw myself into my career. I was determined to prove that I didn't need my family to succeed, and in many ways I did succeed. I got a good job, moved up the ranks, bought my own place. But there was always this emptiness inside me. I dated, but nothing ever got serious. I was afraid of letting anyone get too close, afraid they'd abandon me too. The only family I kept in touch with was my half-sister Sarah. She reached out to me when she was in high school, sending me a friend request on social media. At first, I ignored it. But she was persistent, sending me messages, asking how I was doing. Eventually, I gave in. We started talking, first online, then on the phone. She was different from the rest of them. She seemed to understand, or at least tried to understand, what I'd been through. We started meeting up every Thursday night for dinner. She'd tell me about her life, her college plans, her dreams, and sometimes she'd mention Mom and Dale and Jack. I'd listen, but I never asked questions. It was easier that way. Sarah would sometimes hint that Mom regretted what happened, that she missed me. But I didn't believe it. If Mom really cared, she could have reached out herself. But she never did. And so, life went on. I built a life for myself, a good life. But always with this hole in it, this missing piece that I tried to ignore. Then, 4 years ago, everything changed again. That's when I met Emily. I met Emily at a coffee shop. It was one of those chance encounters you see in movies but never think will happen in real life. I was late for work, rushing to get my morning coffee. As I turned to leave, I crashed right into her, spilling my coffee all over both of us. "I'm so sorry," I said, mortified. But instead of being angry, she laughed. "Well, that's one way to wake up in the morning," she said, still smiling as she tried to wipe the coffee off her blouse. I insisted on buying her a new coffee and paying for her dry cleaning. She agreed, but only if I'd join her for a few minutes. Those few minutes turned into an hour, and by the end, I had her number and a promise to meet for dinner that weekend. Emily was different from anyone I'd ever met. She was kind, funny, and genuinely interested in getting to know me. On our third date, she asked about my family. I gave her the short version that we weren't close and I didn't see them. She didn't push, just nodded and said, "I'm sorry to hear that. Family can be complicated." As we spent more time together, I found myself opening up to her bit by bit. I told her about my dad leaving, about Dale and how I never fit in, about Mom asking me not to come home. Emily listened without judgment, offering comfort when I needed it and space when I didn't want to talk. Emily's family was everything mine wasn't. Her parents, John and Mary, were warm and welcoming. They invited me for dinners, included me in family events. At first it was overwhelming. I didn't know how to act in a family that actually wanted me around. But slowly, I started to feel comfortable with them. 2 years into our relationship, I knew Emily was the one. I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. So on a cool autumn evening, I took her to the coffee shop where we first met. I got down on one knee, right where I had spilled my coffee on her, and asked her to marry me. She said yes. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had a real family. The first few months of our engagement were pure bliss. We were so caught up in our happiness that we didn't think much about the details of the wedding. But as the reality set in that we were actually planning a wedding, we had to start making decisions. One night, as we sat at our kitchen table surrounded by wedding magazines and sample invitations, Emily brought up the question I had been dreading. "So, Tom," she said, her voice careful, "have you thought about inviting your family to the wedding?" I froze. In all our talks about the wedding, I had managed to avoid this topic. I had been hoping, foolishly perhaps, that it wouldn't come up. "Emily," I said slowly, "you know I don't have contact with my family. I don't want to invite them." She reached out and took my hand. "I know, honey. But this is a big day. Don't you think maybe it's time to try and mend those fences?" I pulled my hand away, feeling a familiar anger rising in my chest. There are no fences to mend, Emily. They made it clear they don't want me in their lives. I've accepted that. I don't want them at our wedding. Emily looked hurt, but she nodded. "Okay, Tom. If that's what you want, I understand." I thought that was the end of it. But over the next few weeks, as we continued planning, Emily brought it up again and again. Each time, I explained why I didn't want to invite them. Each time, she said she understood, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. One night, about a month before we were set to send out our save the dates, Emily tried one last time. "Tom," she said, "I've been thinking. What if we just sent an invitation to your parents? We don't have to expect them to come, but it might be a nice gesture. A way to show that you're open to reconciliation if they are." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After all the times we'd discussed this, after all I'd told her about my past, she still didn't understand. "Emily," I said, my voice tight with anger, "I've told you. I don't want them there. They're not a part of my life anymore. Why can't you respect that?" "I do respect it, Tom," she said, her voice rising to match mine. "But this is a big step we're taking. Don't you think it's worth at least trying to include them?" "Include them," I shouted, standing up from the couch where we'd been sitting. "Include them in what? In the family they kicked me out of? In the life they made it clear they didn't want me to be a part of?" Emily stood up too, her eyes filling with tears. "Tom, I'm just trying to help. I hate seeing you carry around all this pain. I thought maybe this could be a chance to start healing." "I don't need to heal," I yelled. "I've dealt with this. I've moved on." "Why can't you see that?" "Because you haven't moved on, Tom," Emily shouted back. "You're still so angry, so hurt. I see it every time we talk about this. I just want you to be happy." "I am happy," I insisted. "I'm happy with you, with the life we're building. Why isn't that enough?" Emily's voice softened. "It is enough, Tom. You're enough. I can't imagine not having my family at our wedding. It breaks my heart to think of your parents missing this day." Something in me snapped. All the anger, all the hurt I'd been carrying for years came pouring out. "You know what, Emily? Maybe we should just cancel the whole thing. Because if you can't respect my feelings about this, if you can't understand what I've been through, then maybe we shouldn't get married at all." The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Emily's face crumpled, and she started to cry in earnest. But I was too angry, too hurt to take them back. Without another word, I stormed out of the living room and into our bedroom, slamming the door behind me. As I sat on the edge of our bed, my head in my hands, I wondered if I had just ruined the best thing in my life. But I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know if I even wanted to try.